Faites appel, s'il vous plaît, monsieur le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brélade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labby. Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Le Hegera. Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Owls. Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Gorst. Monsieur le député Farnham. Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mesick. Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Reniff. Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller. Madame le député Howe. Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute l'heure de libération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien-être et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné à t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Labby.
Présente.
Madame le député Owls.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Madame le député Owls est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le député Gorst.
Worryingly, sir, I think the deputy might still be at the Labour Party.
Yes.
As an observer, sir, not as a member, I understand he's due back today. Thank
Right.
you.
So, state's business then. Right.
Madame le député Moore.
Sir, Deputy Moore's been delayed due to issues with her transport, which are unavoidable. Could you excuse her until she arrives? I know she's trying very hard to get here.
Yes, excuse for the time being.
Madame le député Miller.
Default. Si. Les États sont constitués. Very well. We now resume debate on the amendment to the statutory pre-sale agreement proposition, and the next to speak is Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir. And the deputy to my immediate left commented yesterday that he thought he'd put the cat amongst the pigeons by asking us to debate this separately, but I think perhaps as a result we're having a richer debate on the subject. So, sir, I rise to support this amendment, which reflects a considered and pragmatic approach to reforming Jersey's residential property transaction process, an area that touches the lives of many islanders. Buying or selling a home is not merely a financial transaction, it is a deeply personal milestone, often accompanied by stress, uncertainty and emotional weight. As legislators, we need to have a duty to ensure that the systems governing these transactions are fair and transparent. The original proposition, while well-intentioned, risked binding us to premature conclusions. The amendment, by contrast, offers a pathway grounded in consultation and evidence. The call to undertake a comprehensive consultation on the effectiveness of the residential property transaction process is a commitment to due diligence. The amendment replaces the prescriptive language of must with the more considered should, and introduces the phrase to undertake a consultation, a shift that places emphasis on listening before legislating. This is important because the issues at hand, gazumping, gazundering, chain collapses and mortgage refusals, are symptoms of a broader systemic challenge. To legislate narrowly on pre-sale agreements without understanding the full landscape would be akin to prescribing treatment without diagnosis. The amendment recognises this and proposes a holistic review which includes, but is not limited to, the timeliness of information sharing, the mortgage offer process, conveyancing timelines and Jersey's unique court-based completion system. This is not just about process, it is about people. This acknowledges that failed transactions can have devastating consequences for families, first-time buyers and those navigating complex chains. But rather than rushing in to impose penalties, it asks us to consider the root causes. It invites us to engage with stakeholders, estate agents, legal professionals, mortgage providers, and more importantly, the public, to understand where the system falters and how it can be improved. I draw members' attention to the revised paragraph B, which replaces must with may, and introduces the phrase and consideration given as to whether this should be stipulated in law. This is a crucial refinement. It allows us to explore the use of financial penalties in pre-sale agreements without prematurely enshrining them in statute. It opens the door to flexibility and proportionality, qualities that are essential in any legal framework that touches on personal and financial well-being. Similarly, paragraph C shifts from establish to consider, a list of exclusions to financial penalties. This is not weakening of resolve, it is a strengthening of fairness. By explicitly naming exclusions such as mortgage refusal, followed by adverse survey, substantial property damage and chain collapse, we ensure that we do not penalise individuals for circumstances beyond their control. This reflects a compassionate and realistic understanding of the housing market. Paragraph D further reinforces this approach by replacing the directive to bring forward legislation with a request to present a report to the Assembly no later than June 2027, which will detail the outcomes of the consultation and offer evidence-based recommendations. In supporting this amendment, we are not rejecting the idea of pre-sale agreements, we are embracing the possibility of their thoughtful integration into a modernised transaction process. We are saying that reform must be rooted in understanding that penalties must be proportionate, not punitive. The Council of Ministers is not seeking to dilute the original proposition. On the contrary, it is seeking to strengthen it by ensuring that any future measures are robust, fair and effective. The amendment reflects a shared commitment to improving the housing experience for all islanders. It is a call to action, but one that begins with listening. So I urge members to support the amendment.
Very much, Deputy. Deputy Howell, are you next list to speak?
Thank you, sir. I rise to mirror what Deputy Ferry has just said. I'm sure none of us condone gazumping or gazundering, sir. But as many people have said, there's already a possibility at the moment of signing a pre-sale agreement between the two parties. And I would not be comfortable at the moment with making that mandatory. And I'd just like to point out that in the original proposition, there are exemptions, but I think there are more exemptions that would need to be taken into consideration, such as if, say, the buyer lost their job as the proceedings were going through, or if there was a breakdown of relationship when two people were buying a property together, or also, say, if you had a major illness diagnosis. So I'm very sorry that I can't support the original proposition, but I too urge everyone to support the amendment, sir. Thank you.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. I must say, sir, that I am very grateful to Deputy Mezek. He stepped in and he contacted me, and we sat down in Santander probably about a month ago and had a coffee. It was about 4 p.m. and we had a coffee for about an hour. But it was a very good conversation, because I think really what I got out of that conversation was, look, you're touching on a very sensitive topic that matters to so many people, but there is a bigger job to do here. And we do need to modernise the property transaction process, sir. I think we probably need to be taking a good look at some of the other jurisdictions and the way how their process works, because here it is very different, it's unique, but I think it needs to be modernised. And I think the Council of Ministers are embracing the fact that, look, this is an issue, but we need to explore pre-sale agreements more broadly. We need to be speaking to property professionals, but we also need to be speaking to members of the public who have been gazumped and who've been gazundered as well, because we really need to have a greater understanding of the true extent of the issues that exist. As far as I'm concerned, sir, as a backbencher, I am limited in terms of what I can do. I've got limited resources, but I have put myself out there. I've tried to engage as many people as I can. Several property agents have contacted me to say that they are in support of pre-sale agreements becoming statute, but I think it's probably wise, sir, to go ahead with a consultation. I think it's only fair if some people happen to be maybe antithetical about pre-sale agreements, then I think their voices need to be heard as well. I think that's the whole point of democracy. All views need to be respected, and I think this consultation is probably the best way of doing just that, sir. So I just want to say thank you to the Minister for his time, and I hope members will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy, does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? If no other member wishes to speak on the amendment, then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. In all honesty, I don't think I have too much to say in summing up on this. I think most of the points have been made, particularly ably by Deputy Ferry, who I'm very pleased on this occasion we can advance forward together towards reform. So I thank him for his contribution on this. But also, sir, of course, to Deputy Andrews, who I reiterate what I said in my opening, that I'm grateful to him for his approach on this. He has highlighted an issue that does matter to lots of people, and I'm also grateful for him for being open-minded about stretching that out a bit further so it can be more all-encompassing and make sure that we try to tackle everything rather than just one particular area on its own. Sir, I absolutely appreciate the reasons that Deputy Curtis outlined for him wanting to have this amendment taken separately, and he explained what he thought was that this, as a way of achieving an outcome, wasn't necessarily the right way of going about that. And that's obviously an entirely legitimate perspective to have, and I respect it. I just don't agree with it. I believe that this is a perfectly acceptable way forward, and I hope the majority of members will agree with that as well. I know he's not physically present in the room, sir, but Deputy Renouf, in his speech yesterday, did seek to draw a distinction between my approach on this versus the approach that I'd outlined in question time yesterday about not wanting to consult when it came to changing first-time buyer policies. And there's a very specific reason for that distinction, which is that when it comes to the issue of making our residential property transaction process fairer, is that I actually don't know what the perfect solution is, and I'd like to do an exercise to find out what it is. Whereas on other policy areas, when you are more sure about what the solution is, you shouldn't prevaricate, you should get on with it. So I do think there's a clear distinction here between those two things, and you adopt the right political approach for the right political issue. And so I don't have anything further to add onto that other than to thank members who've taken part in this debate and urge them to support this amendment. And I call for the appel, sir.
Vote is called for. Invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on the amendment to P61, and I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting.
Sorry, sir. All my lights are flashing, but my buttons don't seem to be working. Something I thought I'd never say.
Other than sounding rather like an internet meme, I don't think anyone else has that problem. Has the deputy recorded a vote?
Okay.
Maybe you'd like to record your vote verbally.
My vote is poor, sir.
And we'll try and sort out the technology. The amendment has been adopted, 39 votes pour, 4 votes contre, 1 abstention.
Could we have the 4 and the 1, please?
Those members voting contre, Deputies Ayer, War, Jeune and Alex Curtis, and Deputy Renouf abstained.
And we now return to the debate on the main proposition, P61, as amended. It's been proposed and seconded. Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? If no member wishes to speak on the proposition, Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. It will be of no surprise to members. I do not think this is the correct approach for deciding how we pursue work in this area. I'm grateful that the Housing Minister highlighted this is just a point of difference as to how to pursue this. This is the way I will pursue where I think we should go, and as such, for no doubt, I shall be voting contra on this.
Does any other member wish to? Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. Looking back over my emails, something Deputy Andrews said yesterday struck a chord, and I've obviously spoken in the previous debate on gazumping and, if not on gazundering, although I think I did mention something about gazundering. I won't repeat that this time about what a gazunder is. But I do recall that constituent having contacted me, and the sum is actually familiar, and so I do know that this is a long-standing issue, and it's something that I raised in the States for that constituent at the time. And I think that Deputy Andrews needs to be congratulated for not just bringing this back, but also being open-minded to different ways of working, because I know that in the past, I suppose, when I've raised similar issues, for example, the one that springs to mind quite early on was when I had a lot of contact from people around the code of conduct for debt collectors in Jersey, where there seemed to be an issue. And it wasn't simply a straightforward issue of just do this and there's no other way. But it's actually, I did work with the minister at the time, I think the Economic Development Minister, to ultimately we came up with a voluntary code of conduct for the industry. But I think what Deputy Andrews is saying here is that he's come here with a particular way that this could have worked. He cited the French model as a way that that country works. And after a conversation with the Minister for Housing has clearly understood that this is a wider issue, so absolutely what he's identified is correct, and they're symptoms rather than necessarily the causes of the problem that he's identified. So I do welcome what's in front of us, and I do know that the Minister will also want to bring a piece of work forward. So I think this is a way to actually look at the whole piece around property transactions, which you could either say is rather quaint and traditional in the way that members of the public, sir, and I know you're present, sir, so I'll be careful about what I say. The going to court is often a very big occasion for people. You see that they put photos on social media, they take photos, proud first-time owners with their keys, and perhaps go to one of the local drinking establishments after to celebrate that transaction. And so there is, of course, a sense of occasion, which I'm sure many in Jersey would not want to lose. But we do have to also accept that we are in the 21st century and that we all do work in different ways. So there must be different ways to do things which could perhaps eliminate certain of these problems at source, even if it doesn't always force good behaviour in every circumstance. So I do wish the Minister and Deputy Andrews all the best in this, and I certainly have no problem in supporting it. I did support it the first time round, and I'm happy to support it in this format too.
Very much, Deputy. Connie St Mary.
Thank you, sir. And after my mental perambulations of yesterday, I did vote for the amendment for a number of reasons. First of all, the proposal of the main proposition advised that was with his approval, that it be curious to go against his wishes. Secondly, the consultation period referred to in the amendment is in fact shorter than that in the original proposition. So it seems to me that given this long period of consultation, there's nothing to stop Deputy Andrews or anyone else introducing yet a further proposition to address this one particular point. And I do wish to remind members here that it is not a reforming point. The ability to have a preliminary contract for sale exists now. Deputy Bailiff said that in his day, sorry, Deputy, not in his day, but it was perhaps previously more usual to have preliminary agreements than it is today, and I simply would like to revert that system. It is within the gift of the legal profession and the estate agent profession to bring that option to the attention of their clients, and I hope they do so now. I also suggest there are things that can be done to improve the general procedure. In England, for instance, I hesitate to hark back to England. As executive in an English estate, I was selling a property. I was required to complete a package of measures, package of information as to sewage rights, boiler maintenance, etc. These are all things which can be improved to help the overall process, and I say so, that is within the gift of the professions to take that forward, and I hope that they will not wait till the end of this consultation period to do so. And the other aspect I mentioned, I hesitate to be pessimistic, that reference is made to a consultation to get the views of lawyers, estate agents, etc. That's exactly what the review panel did some years ago. And we came to certain conclusions. We aired the various problems, and I'm sure that they will be aired yet again. And I simply question whether that consultation will take us much further forward as regards addressing this particular point. So I do hope that in the interim between now and the end of the consultation period, other members, if not myself, will think about reintroducing this measure to, if not insist, advocate the greater need for preliminary contracts, and so that this certainty can be introduced to the equation and improve the present situation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Connie. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak on the proposition, then I close the debate and I call upon Deputy Andrews to respond.
Thank you, sir. No, I do appreciate the support of members of the States Assembly. I know many members of the public will also appreciate the support here as well today, because for many of them, I think it's a positive move that they have seen their very own States Assembly take a decision where a consultation is going to take place to look at the feasibility of pre-sale agreements to address gazumping and gazundering, but also about broader things within pre-sale agreements as well, because the pre-sale agreements really outline the process between the buyer and the seller. And so I think it's going to be a very informative exercise, and I think even the policymakers, especially those who work in the department where Deputy Mezek is the minister, for them, I think this is going to be a very informative exercise, because they are going to be informed about some of the things that people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, such as the lawyers, the banks, the estate agents. And I think that is going to probably better inform government policy in this area. And I think it's really sending out a very strong message that, you know what, the State Assembly is taking this matter very seriously. I did fear, sir, had this been rejected today, I don't know what I would have been doing. I think it would have been very difficult for me to go back to some of the people who I've engaged with, because I think they were really expecting that with this proposal. There was an overwhelming level of support, like no other proposition that I've lodged before. And then to see that be rejected would have been very demoralising, not just for me, but for many people out there. I know there are many people who work in industry, such as several estate agents who've contacted me to say, look, we want pre-sale agreements in statute, and we've been calling for this for years. And that was from the previous consultation that took place with the Constable of St Mary. I think he had about 3 other panel members who were working on the review at the time as well. And you could see, when you look at that report, there was a few people who came before the panel, and they were arguing that we really need to see something be done here, because it's not right. And the process, it has to be modified, it has to be improved, there has to be greater certainty. And I think that's all people want when they are buying property. We know how expensive property is, and to be gazumped or to be gazundered, especially late on when you've incurred fees, is not right. It's not okay. It's immoral. It's unjust. It shouldn't be happening in our modern day society. And I'm of the firm view, sir, that legislation is needed for this. But as I said before, it's only right that those who are antithetical to my perspective are also given the opportunity to contribute to the consultation. I think we need to really see that pluralism, and we should be engaging with everybody, no matter what their views. So I will leave it there, sir, but I again must thank members for supporting me and the Council of Ministers amendment. And I also want to say thank you to Deputy Mezek as well for meeting me on 2 separate occasions, so we could really discuss this in a thorough and methodical manner. So thank you, sir, and I'll call for the appel.
That is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on P61. I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their vote. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. And the proposition has been adopted. 44 votes pour, 2 votes contre, no abstentions.
Those members voting contre, Deputies Ayer and Alex Curtis.
The next item is the draft Telecommunications Law Jersey Amendment Regulations P62, lodged by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. The main respondent is the Chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Telecommunications Law Jersey Amendment Regulations 2000. The states make these regulations under Article 57 of the Telecommunications Jersey Law 2002.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the proposed regulations amend the Telecommunications Jersey Law 2002 to provide the necessary functions to the UK Office of Communications, that's Ofcom, as more usually known, and the Jersey Competition Regulatory Authority in relation to telephone numbers in Jersey. Telephone numbers, as we all know, are unique addresses that enable our phone calls and text messages and are essential for everyday life and modern communications. Jersey telecommunications providers and islanders themselves have, of course, we all know this, used UK telephone numbers for decades, and Jersey is part of the UK National Telephone Numbering Plan. That plan is the regulatory system managed by Ofcom to allocate telephone numbers. It dictates the format for telephone numbers. For example, our landline telephone numbers begin with 01534,
and our mobile telephone numbers with +44, the UK country code. As Jersey is part of the UK National Numbering Plan, Ofcom has been responsible for allocating telephone numbers in Jersey, and local telecommunication providers have applied directly to Ofcom for any allocation. Whilst this has been the case for decades, at the end of 2024, Ofcom discovered that the legal basis for this practice is not, and in fact has never been in place. Ofcom has therefore decided that it is unable to allocate any more telephone numbers in Jersey until this legal basis is put in place. The inability to allocate new telephone numbers, I can imagine it doesn't take too much of the imagination to understand that that would likely disrupt critical telecommunications infrastructure projects, such as network transformation programs and the launch of services, such as the expected launch of a new mobile service later this year, both of which require further telephone number allocations. Furthermore, without the proposed regulations, Ofcom and the JCRA are unable to enforce security requirements regarding the use of +44 telephone numbers, potentially allowing activities harmful to the security interests of Jersey and the UK. These regulations seek to address these issues and simply put into law what is already custom and practice. But so, as I'm sure members can realise, that if we were not to adopt these regulations, Jersey would be left in a very difficult place, as Ofcom has made it clear that it wouldn't be able to allocate new telephone numbers to the island. I think members will likely be interested to know that this is the same for the other Crown dependencies, the Isle of Man and Guernsey, and they have similarly taken measures to assuage Ofcom and its need for a legal basis for the system. So, sir, with that, I'll make the proposition.
Move the principles. And
yes, sir.
Are the principles seconded? Does any member wish to speak on the principles? Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. The panel is grateful for having received a briefing from the Minister and his officers on this, what is, I think for some, maybe quite complex language, but it certainly, I think after 2 attempts, I at least half understood what was being proposed, notwithstanding the fact that I used to work for Jersey Telecom. So I don't know if that gives any reassurance. But more importantly, I think I understood the politics of what was going on, if I couldn't necessarily write a paper on it. Essentially here, we understand that global titles, the way that they're used, these mobile numbers which can be leased out and then subleased again, has given rise to security concerns. And so we understand that Ofcom certainly are looking to clamp down on that, and we understand that Jersey and the operators over here understand that. I do have a few questions that I would put to the Minister, or a question, or that I would seek comment on behalf of the panel for during this debate, just with regard to perhaps the financial impact that it may have had or may be having on the revenues of those companies. So the panel notes that at the end of 2024, Ofcom discovered that it lacked the necessary legal authority to continue its long-standing role of allocating telephone numbers in Jersey and other Crown dependencies. This prompted the need of Ofcom to be provided with the necessary legal framework to allow it to continue allocating telephone numbers and the subsequent drafting of these regulations. So, of course, that's the other big part of this the legislation, the amendment that's coming forward today, is that, of course, that in order for Jersey to continue to be able to use the +44 and allocated numbers that go with that, that there needs to be this underpinning. The panel understands that there are serious implications arising from the absence of the necessary legal framework, including most notably Ofcom being unable to issue new telephone numbers to Jersey, limits on the regulator's authority to safeguard telecom security, and impacts on any upcoming telecommunications infrastructure projects, with the example of the co-op mobile service. The panel also notes that this telephone numbering issue impacts on all Crown dependencies, and the Minister noted within the accompanying report that the Government of Jersey and the Isle of Man government has also participated in the engagement process. And we also understand that Guernsey and the Isle of Man were progressing their own solutions. So we understand that whilst Ofcom will be responsible for allocating numbers, the JCRA will remain the regulatory authority holding the core regulatory responsibilities, and that recourse could be sought through the JCRA. Ofcom remains responsible for the allocation and withdrawal of telephone numbers, but the JCRA will hold responsibility for regulating telephone numbers in Jersey and, where necessary, can make recommendations for Ofcom's action. So the panel did have some concerns which we've put in our comments. We requested a follow-up briefing from government officials which took place on the 10th of September after we identified the issues of global titles as requiring further consideration and clarification given the risks they pose for Jersey. During the briefing, we heard that since Ofcom's ban on the leasing of global titles to third parties, and with the draft regulation enabling the JCRA to impose similar conditions on third parties in Jersey, the risks are being addressed. And on this basis, the panel is satisfied that the risks associated with global title leasing are effectively mitigated both through Ofcom's prohibition and the new powers that the draft regulations, if adopted, would provide to the JCRA. The panel also understands, just in concluding, that we are supportive of the need for these regulations to provide Ofcom with the legal framework to continue issuing and allocating telephone numbers in Jersey as a continuum of its long-standing practice. Furthermore, my panel also recognises the risk to both service delivery and security should the legal framework not be implemented. The panel does consider it important to note its concern that the legal anomaly that the draft regulations aim to address went undetected for so long. So we would maybe ask the Minister in his summing up to speak to that point as why it took so long to find out that there was this issue. It was only brought to the Minister's attention by Ofcom. And this is a matter that the Minister, as I've said, hopefully will address in the summing up. But otherwise, the panel is supportive and content that the JCRA is a local regulator and will retain core regulatory responsibilities. Members, of course, may wish to consider the relationship between Ofcom and the JCRA themselves and ultimately consider what real autonomy Jersey has in terms of its number allocation. I just put those comments out there for potential fuel for the debate, sir. There is also just one question I was wanting to ask the Minister, and it really relates to the fact that certainly until we were drawn, our attention was drawn to the changes that were happening globally in global titles. Of course, we understand the rationale for having to cease global titles. One of the questions we did ask, because the answer came back that whilst global titles leasing has been quite standard in the industry and it provides a good revenue base, it's often the subleasing and then subleasing again. So companies and governments, especially security agencies, don't know who is ultimately behind the services that are being provided. So those services can be used for all sorts of potential nefarious purposes, to track individuals, to spam people, but also to defraud people. And it becomes very difficult to trace. So this is part of a global clampdown on those nefarious practices. But of course, we did ask, well, why can't you simply ban the subletting of these global titles rather than just the initial letting? And the answer we got was, which we understood, was that it becomes very difficult. You can't really stop subleasing and then the subsequent subleasing. So that's why Ofcom are just saying, no, this practice has to stop. But in its response to the consultation last year, Jersey Telecom, for example, did put a response. So, and their point 463 in their submission said that lessors currently generate revenue from leasing global titles. A ban on global title leasing will therefore result in loss of revenues. Although these revenues can currently be large for some lessors, the relevant net impact on lessors is likely to be significantly lower for the reasons below. This is likely to impact or possibly remove revenues from MVNO, so mobile virtual network operators, vertical and more importantly squeeze this high volume, low margin business if intermediate technological solutions are introduced. These costs are likely to be passed on to the mobile virtual network operators, to the end customer, possible alternatives could provide an unfair advantage to large UK MNOs to the scale to make MVNO propositions unattractive for smaller players. Our concern, and I suppose this is partly understandable due to the sensitive nature and the security nature of what's going on here, and also the fact that this only came to our scrutiny panel quite late. I think both as a panel, but also as a private member and a citizen in Jersey, I would ask what analysis and what has been done of the financial impact that this has had, both on the companies themselves. We know that we are in a situation in Jersey where there used to be 3 mobile network providers, and one of them's, I think it's common knowledge, isn't it, is going out of the market. So we have Jersey Telecom, which is a entirely state-owned company left, and we have Shaw, which is another big player in the market. And we know that, of course, in addition to this, there have also been other pressures in terms of hardware changes, in terms of legislation about what kind of hardware is allowed to be used and what for security reasons. And it seems in a time when we're all being mindful of economic competitiveness and the security of our wider financial economic viability in the island, that this doesn't seem to have gathered any comment in the public realm about A, what impact this is having on those businesses, and secondly, I think we should all be concerned, or at least, I think we should all be concerned as part of shareholders, if you like, through the Treasury Minister in Jersey Telecom, and also through the fact that the other utilities give tax revenue to the state's coffers, about whether or not that we're going to see reduced taxes and reduced shareholder revenues from this. So if it's possible for the Minister to speak to any of that and to indicate either what analysis has been done to date on that, and if none, why not, and what analysis might be done in the next few years to see the impact of this. Essentially, it's a necessary imposition from the UK and elsewhere. So the panel doesn't disagree with what's being done, but we do have to be very realistic that this will have potentially unintended financial consequences for the island's telecom market.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? If no other member wishes to speak on the principles, then I close the debate to call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Chair of the Scrutiny Panel for his comments and the panel itself for the comments that they provided. Sir, it is an unusual situation that we're in, there's no question, and I think this is a case of something worked for years and years and years. No one really needed to look any closer at how it was working, and so this issue, I think, effectively predates Ofcom. For decades, Jersey, the other Crown dependencies, and the UK worked within the UK numbering system without any questions. I think Ofcom was founded about 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, at the time of the kind of breaking up of the UK monopoly in telecoms. And we, as the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man, just passed into that new system without anyone questioning the fact that the UK had been passing telephone numbers to the islands to use. That carried on, and no one thought anything about it. And when Ofcom took over the role of regulating telecoms, that just continued. And it was only because of not just the issue of global titles. I know the Chair has spoken a great deal about it, but there are other areas around telecoms security, as we have been bringing, telecom security laws to this chamber as well, that Ofcom then looked a bit more closely at the situation and realised that actually there is no legal basis for it to be allocating telephone numbers to Jersey. And certainly on the issue of global titles, I imagine it in itself, it felt it wanted a bit more direct authority in that area, because it has become very clear in the last few years that unfortunately, whilst global titles do provide revenue to Jersey and Channel Island and Crown dependency telecoms companies, they are in some instances being used for inappropriate purposes. It is that simple. Sometimes illegal purposes, sometimes not, just inappropriate purposes. And as the chair of the scrutiny panel has pointed out, it's not really possible to regulate at the sub-leasing kind of level. And so it's become necessary to steer the telecoms companies away from using global titles. It will have a significant impact on their income, potentially. I don't know what that impact is, because in this case, it is a case of national security trumps their income. It really is that simple. We've had various stories in the national media about global titles that were operating from Jersey being used for illegal purposes, which obviously shines a light on the island, an island which needs a strong reputation for security in all sorts of areas, but particularly in the financial services sector, which uses the telecoms network to be a globally connected society. And so it is a rather unusual story. I think it's one of those where it almost tells the tale of going from simpler times to more complex times. And in these more complex times, we do need to have this legal basis. I'm very pleased that Ofcom understands the jurisdictional differences between Jersey and the United Kingdom, and hence has been comfortable with the Jersey Competition Regulatory Authority maintaining the direct management here on island, and is working together for a partnership agreement or an MOU with the JCRA, so that Ofcom and JCRA work together in an appropriate manner which recognises those jurisdictional differences. But at the end of the day, and I hope the Assembly agrees with me, this is something that needs to happen. We do need to pass these regulations because the consequences of not doing so would be unbelievably severe in terms of the inability for telecoms companies to issue telephone numbers. It really is as basic as that. And if they can't issue telephone numbers, then they can't issue services to people. And that would be an awful place for us to be in. So, sir, on that upbeat note, I will move the proposition. Thanks, sir.
Call for the appel. As called for, I invite members to return to their seats. Vote is on the principles of P62. And I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their vote. And I ask the greffier to close the voting. The principles have been adopted. 46 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions. Deputy Tadier, I'm assuming your panel doesn't wish to call the matter in?
No, sir.
Minister, how do you wish to deal with the matter in second reading?
Sir, en bloc.
Are the regulations seconded for second reading? Does any member wish to speak in second reading? Those in favour of adopting in second reading kindly show. Those against? The regulations are adopted in second reading. Do you propose in third reading, Minister?
Yes, sir.
Is it seconded for third reading? Does any member wish to speak in third reading? Deputy Jean?
Thank you, sir. And I rise because the discussion we had under the principles, there was points made very strongly about security and the need to issuing numbers and understanding that the national security. And I was just wondering if the Minister could talk a little bit, because I was surprised when I first came back to Jersey, having been, of course, a long time in Europe and also travelling the world, that many times when you do a pay-as-you-go card, you need to provide ID when you go and purchase a pay-as-you-go card. But in Jersey, and I believe in the UK, that's not needed. And I was wondering if that is something as well, because in Europe it's done because of national security related to counter-terrorism, preventing fraud and kind of traceability of communications. And if that's something that the Minister has talked to Ofcom about, and about something that would potentially be looked at in Jersey. I know for especially ahead of the terrorist attacks in Brussels that I witnessed.
Deputy, I'm hesitate to interrupt you, and I don't wish to be overly fastidious, but standing orders require that any debate on third reading is simply do we or do we not adopt the regulations in third reading in their current form.
Okay, sorry, sir.
That's quite right, but there's...
I was hoping that the Minister would be able to see if there's something that he would look into within the national security aspect.
No, I understand what you were saying. It just doesn't belong in third reading in accordance with standing orders.
Thank you, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. The reasons I think we can have confidence in passing this in the third reading is that I'm always impressed by, well, I say not always, but I'm often reminded, especially in times when the public service can get negative press and there's a global theme going around that government is too big in Jersey by the quality of some of the people that we have working in our government offices. So it was remiss of me earlier, sir, not to say thank you to my scrutiny panel and our officers who have done great work on this, but also the quality of the explanations and the passion that that the officers have to be able to explain these things clearly, and often things that we might think are quite dry but vitally important. It's important, I think, that we recognise that government does need to have a good cross-section of highly skilled individuals who could be working in the private sector, who often have been working in the private sector, and bring their knowledge to us. And they've certainly brought their intelligence and influence to bear on bringing forward what I think is quite a delicate, sensitive piece here, and one which we can have confidence in, sir, today. So if the Minister would be happy to pass our thanks on.
Does any other member wish to speak in third reading? No other member wishes to speak in third reading? I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. I thank Deputy Tadier for his comments about the team who have worked on this, and I fully agree with him. Coming from a telecoms background, as Deputy Tadier does himself, he did say that he used the word dry, and there are areas in that subject matter which are extremely dry, but somehow, and I think Deputy Tadier may agree, also strangely fascinating. And my officers in this area, or Jersey's officers in this area, I should say, are passionate about the role they play, and they do extremely good work. And I will pass on his gratitude and his thanks accordingly. Very quickly to Deputy Jeune, without wanting to fall foul of the chair's ruling, I don't know, and I will look into it. Thank you. With that, I move this proposition in third reading. So.
Third reading. Do you call for the appel? That is called for. I invite members to return to the room. The vote is on the draft Telecommunications Law Amendment Regulations in third reading. I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The regulations have been adopted in third reading, 46 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions. Very well, the next item was to have been the draft Dogs Jersey law, but I understand that's being deferred. Is that correct? It is correct. Greffier, that's correct. Very well, then that concludes public business, and I call upon the chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee for the arrangement of public business for the future.
Thank you, sir. As you've just mentioned, the only change is that P63 has been deferred till the 11th of November. The 21st of October, the next sitting, is not too heavy on propositions, so I expect it to be completed by the end of the 22nd, that is the Wednesday. Otherwise, there are no changes. So I make the proposal for the order of business, and I ask leave to address the Assembly once it has been accepted. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Do members agree with the order of business? Very well, then that's the order of business forward. Yes, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this marks the last occasion on which you will preside over the Assembly. In light of this fact, as Chair of PPC, I would like to say a few words on behalf of all members. You are President of the States Assembly and also Chief Judge in the Royal Court. You encounter reprobates, lawbreakers, and ne'er-do-wells. And you also pass judgment in the Royal Court, where you deal with reprobates, lawbreakers, and ne'er-do-wells. Your membership of this Assembly dates back 17 years to April 2008, when you were appointed as Solicitor General. You subsequently served as Attorney General and Deputy Bailiff, and for the last 6 of those years, you have been President of the States and Presiding Officer in the Assembly's meetings. Since 2015, not including this meeting, you have presided for a total of 1,300 hours, which is the equivalent of 54 days, roughly the same time it takes from base camp to the summit of Everest, though I draw no comparison. No one could have foreseen in October 2019 what was to come and the times during which you would serve as bailiff. I refer primarily, of course, to the COVID pandemic and the impact it had on Jersey and on the work of this Assembly. As public health guidelines were established and the full effect of the pandemic became apparent, the Assembly was forced to adapt. Physical distancing required us to move location to Fort Regent, and soon afterwards the Assembly's meetings went almost totally online. Indeed, the Assembly was the first Parliament in the Commonwealth whose meetings were conducted entirely online, with all members able to participate remotely. I said almost totally online, as whilst we as elected members joined from home, you as bailiff continued to attend in person. At first, this was at Digital Jersey, but in time there was a return to the States building and the States Chamber itself. That must have been a strange experience, with just you and the greffier in the chamber and all of us at home. And it presented its challenges, both technological and procedural. Suddenly, all manner of noises, from dogs barking to other impromptu interjections that I won't mention, could be heard to interrupt the proceedings. Remote participation did raise the prospect for you to be able to mute any one of us at the touch of a button, a temptation to which I'm glad to say you never gave into, although I'm sure there have been occasions since then when you wish that you still had that ability. The pandemic required the Assembly to operate at speed, adopting and progressing legislation in a way rarely seen. Seldom has the Assembly been as busy, but other significant developments came during your presidency. The passing of Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, and the declaration of the new King in the Royal Square soon after were both important and historic events. Brexit came to its fruition, and the Assembly was required to meet remotely 2 days after Christmas 2021 on a Sunday to agree the final arrangements for the island. A decision on the new hospital for Jersey, after various changes in direction, was finally taken after what can only be described as a foreshortened debate. And perhaps most significantly, the Assembly agreed to the introduction of the assisted dying legislation. The first step in that process was a debate on in-principle proposition in November 2021, a debate over which you presided. You referred at the time to the respectful way in which the debate had taken place. You have approached your responsibilities in this Assembly with good humour, dignity and diligence. I understand that prior to being sworn in as Deputy Bailiff, you sought to gain experience of what it is to be in the chair and to preside in this chamber. Our Year 5 primary school visits presented you with that opportunity. And you had the chance to preside over debates on the banning of homework and on bringing pets to school. From a presiding perspective, I wonder if you felt it was all downhill from there. But that preparation meant you were ready for anything that we as elected members might throw at you. You have also presided when this chamber has been used for the Youth Assembly and other public engagement events like the People's Debate. You have always managed such events appropriately, pitching the tone exactly right and affording participants who are not used to speaking in these surroundings the best possible circumstances to deliver their contributions. Your duties as bailiff extend beyond what happens in this place. There are your duties in the other place, down the corridor from here, but there is also the important role you have played with the community and as part of island life. All of us have witnessed firsthand your attendance at numerous community events and have seen your dedication to the role of bailiff and to your island. Jersey has celebrated 2 significant anniversaries of liberation during your tenure. The 75th anniversary celebrations were muted because of the health restrictions in place during lockdown. But the island was fully able to celebrate and commemorate the 80th anniversary this year. You have received royal visitors to our shores, including the Wessexes for Liberation Day in 2022, but perhaps the most significant was the visit of King Charles III and Queen Camilla in July last year, which, despite the weather, was a great success and afforded you the opportunity to express on behalf of the island our appreciation of their majesties. I know that in a few moments we will signal our appreciation of your dedication in the usual way in this chamber. Your dedication was recognised by Her Majesty the late Queen when you were knighted in June 2022. I know that in the other place, a portrait of you will be unveiled in line with the tradition of retiring bailiffs. I can assure you, sir, that it will be a true likeness, as I had one commissioned by the same artist, although not for my retirement, I might add. On behalf of the Assembly, may I express members' thanks and appreciation for all you have done, both here and for the island as a whole, and wish you the very best for your future. Thank you, sir.
It may sound like I am choked with emotion. I actually have an extremely bad cold. But that notwithstanding, Deputy IA, I really do thank you very much indeed for those incredibly kind and generous words. I'm not going to say very much in response because there will be an opportunity for me to speak to members at a retiring dinner in 2 weeks' time, and I shall keep some, at least, of my powder dry until then. But you have certainly highlighted and made reference to many of the highlights of my time as bailiff, which have made it quite an incredible and memorable journey for me. It's quite strange to be sitting here for the last time, having done so for 10 years or so up to now. You never forget your first time, as they say. And my first time was as deputy bailiff shortly after I was sworn in. You also never forget your first point of order. That was Deputy Tadier. I lasted about 3 questions into questions with notice before the deputy thought it was time to test me with a point of order. Forgive and forget, deputy, that's what I say. But I won't. It was also the same deputy who gave me the other slightly challenging moment when he sought, and I can only assume he knew what he was saying, and therefore intentionally to slip a non-parliamentary word into his speech in Jerrier. It was quite fascinating to watch those who spoke Jerrier crying with laughter, whilst everybody else looked quite nonplussed and wondered what was going on. It was lucky. It was one of the very few rude words in Jerrier that I know, so I was able to spot it. Plus ça change. I'm just going to say this. It has been an enormous source of pride for me, a great privilege and a genuine pleasure to have presided over this assembly. It's a remarkable place, in my view. It is challenging and it is high energy. And there are the whole range of experiences, from frankly the desultory to the absolutely wonderful. And I think I should mention that through all of that, this Assembly has been supported and is always supported by the greffier, deputy greffier, and their staff. And I can say with certainty that we all owe more to them than we realise by the quiet service that they give constantly to this place. I think I want to say one other thing as well. This Assembly is at its very best when we bring our best version of ourselves into the room. When it is tolerant, when it's kind, when it does not engage in ad hominem attacks, and when it is the issue that is debated and not the behaviour of the individual. This Assembly is often able to achieve that, although sometimes it does not. But when it does, that's the Assembly I remember, that's the Assembly that I am proud of and have been privileged to have served. And that's the Assembly I will carry with me as I leave it now for the last time in this capacity, and that is not foreshadowing any intention to come back in any other capacity. But it's the Assembly that the public can and should respect. I shall miss it. Thank you all very much. Well, thank you. Thank you. The Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 on the 21st of October.